I found them on my balcony at my own birthday party. My boyfriend Marcus and my younger sister Chloe, kissing like I didn't exist. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I smiled, walked back inside and began documenting everything. Because what I discovered over the next 7 weeks would destroy them both at the one place they'd never see coming. My father's milestone birthday dinner with the entire family watching. This isn't just another cheating story. This is about what happens when betrayal comes from the two people who were supposed to protect you most. When your baby sister and your partner of 3 years decide you're disposable. When you realize the affair wasn't a drunken mistake but a calculated deception that lasted months. This story proves that sometimes the most devastating revenge isn't emotional, it's methodical. Sometimes justice isn't about confrontation, it's about evidence. And sometimes the people who underestimate your intelligence pay the highest price. My name is Nova, I'm 26 years old, and this is how I turned my sister's betrayal into her public humiliation using nothing but patience and screenshots. I grew up in what most people would call a picture-perfect family in suburban Connecticut. My parents met in college, built successful careers and gave my sister Chloe and me everything we needed. On paper we had it all. The brick colonial house, the golden retriever, the family vacations every summer. But underneath that glossy surface lived a dynamic that shaped everything that came later. Chloe is 4 years younger than me. Growing up, our relationship was complicated in ways I didn't fully understand until much later. She was the baby, the one with the big blue eyes and infectious laugh that could charm anyone. I was the responsible older sister, the one who got straight A's and never caused problems. Our parents loved us both, but there was always this subtle difference in how they treated us. When Chloe struggled in school, it was because she was creative and free-spirited. When I struggled, it was because I wasn't trying hard enough. When Chloe broke curfew, it was youthful rebellion. When I came home 15 minutes late, it was disrespect. I learned early that my role in the family was to be perfect so Chloe could be forgiven for being flawed. By the time I graduated college with my graphic design degree, Chloe was still figuring herself out. She dropped out of community college twice, bounced between part-time jobs, and was living back in our childhood bedroom at 22. My parents supported her completely, both emotionally and financially. I'd moved to Boston, built my career at a small but respected design agency, and was finally living the independent life I'd worked toward. That's where I met Marcus. He was 28, worked in software development and seemed like everything I'd been looking for. He was stable where Chloe's boyfriends had been chaotic. He was ambitious where my ex had been complacent. He remembered small details about my day and actually listened when I talked about my design projects. After 6 months of dating, he met my family at Christmas dinner. I remember watching Chloe's face when Marcus walked through the door. She lit up in that way she always did around attractive men. Extra animated, extra flirty, extra everything. I'd seen her do it 1,000 times before, so I didn't think much of it. Marcus was polite to her but clearly more interested in impressing my parents. The evening went well. My dad liked that Marcus followed baseball. My mom appreciated that he brought wine and complimented her cooking. Over the next 2.5 years, Marcus became part of my life in Boston while Chloe remained stuck in her pattern back home. She'd gotten a job as a receptionist at a dental office, then quit after 8 months because her boss was supposedly too demanding. She briefly dated a guy who played in a local band, then another who worked at a tattoo parlor. Neither relationship lasted more than a few months. Meanwhile, Marcus and I talked about moving in together, about long-term plans, about building something real. The cracks started showing about 6 months before my birthday. Small things at first. Marcus seemed distracted during our video calls. He'd check his phone more frequently when we were together. When I asked about his weekend, his answers became vague. He'd hung out with friends, watched some games, nothing specific. I attributed it to work stress. His company was going through a restructure, and he'd mentioned feeling uncertain about his position. Then Chloe started asking about Marcus more often during our weekly phone calls. How was he doing? Was he still working crazy hours? Did we have any fun plans coming up? At the time, I thought she was just being sisterly, trying to show interest in my relationship. I even appreciated it because Chloe had never been particularly invested in my life before. It felt like maybe we were finally developing an adult friendship now that she'd matured. I planned my birthday party for a Saturday evening in late April. Nothing elaborate, just drinks and appetizers at my apartment with about 20 close friends and family. My parents drove up from Connecticut with Chloe. Marcus came straight from his place, arriving early to help me set up. Everything seemed normal. He kissed me hello, helped arrange furniture, made jokes with my friends as they arrived. The party was going well. Music playing, people laughing, the warm buzz of conversation filling my small living room and kitchen. Around 9 o'clock, I realized I hadn't seen Marcus or Chloe for about 15 minutes. I checked the bathroom. Empty. The bedroom, empty. That's when I noticed the balcony door was slightly ajar. My apartment has a small balcony that overlooks the parking lot. Nothing scenic, but it's private and a good place to escape when the apartment gets too warm or crowded. I walked toward the door, planning to step outside for some air myself. That's when I saw them through the glass. Marcus had Chloe pressed against the railing. His hands were in her hair. Her arms were wrapped around his neck. They were kissing like they'd done it 1,000 times before. Comfortable, familiar, intense. Not the awkward fumbling of a first-time mistake. This was practiced. This was routine. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds, frozen. My brain couldn't process what my eyes were seeing. This was Marcus, who'd been helping me set up an hour ago. This was Chloe, who'd hugged me and handed me a birthday card when she arrived. They were supposed to be mine, my boyfriend, my sister. The two people I trusted most outside my parents. Then something clicked inside me. Not heartbreak, that would come later. Not rage, though that was simmering underneath. What I felt in that moment was crystal clarity. This wasn't a drunken mistake. This wasn't a split-second lapse in judgment. This was deliberate. This was calculated. And if I reacted emotionally right now, I'd lose any power I had in this situation. I stepped back from the door before they could see me, walked calmly back to my kitchen, grabbed my phone, opened the camera up, returned to the balcony door and took 3 photos through the glass. Clear shots of them kissing, his hands on her body, her fingers gripping his shirt. Then I quietly slid the door open. The sound made them jump apart. Chloe's face went pale. Marcus's eyes went wide. I looked at both of them with the calmest expression I could manufacture and said that some people were leaving soon and wanted to say goodbye. My voice didn't shake. My smile didn't waver. I turned and walked back inside before either of them could respond. For the rest of the party, I was the perfect hostess. I laughed at jokes, refilled drinks, thanked people for coming. Marcus stayed close to me, his hand on my lower back, playing the attentive boyfriend. Chloe avoided looking at me directly but rejoined the party, sticking close to our parents. To everyone else, nothing was wrong. Inside, my mind was racing through possibilities. After the last guest left around midnight, my parents and Chloe said their goodbyes. Chloe hugged me tightly, whispering a slightly slurred happy birthday. Marcus stayed to help clean up. As I loaded the dishwasher, he came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist, kissing my neck. Asked if I'd had a good time. Told me he loved me. I said yes to everything. Smiled. Kissed him back. Let him stay over like he usually did after parties at my place. We had sex that night. I initiated it, actually, partly because I needed to know if I'd imagined what I'd seen, if I was overreacting, if there was some explanation. But also because some dark part of me wanted to see if he'd do it. If he'd kiss me with the same mouth that had been on my sister an hour earlier. He did. Enthusiastically. He left Sunday morning with plans to see me again Wednesday for dinner. After he left, I sat on my couch with my phone and began investigating. I didn't cry. I didn't call my best friend. I opened my laptop and started gathering evidence. First, I looked at the photos I'd taken. They were clear enough. No question about what was happening. I uploaded them to a private cloud folder and deleted them from my phone in case Marcus ever looked through it. Then I started thinking about what other evidence might exist. Marcus and I shared a Netflix account. I logged in and checked the viewing history. Most of it was predictable. Shows I watched, shows he watched, shows we'd watched together. But there were anomalies. Episodes of a true crime documentary I'd never heard of. Watched at times when Marcus told me he was working late. A romantic comedy viewed on a Tuesday afternoon when he said he was in meetings all day. Each instance was small on its own. Together they painted a picture. Then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. On 3 separate occasions over the past 2 months, someone had watched episodes of a cooking competition show. A show I'd never watched, a show Marcus had specifically told me he hated. But it was Chloe's favorite show. She'd posted about it multiple times on Instagram, made references to contestants during phone calls with me. I opened Spotify next. Marcus and I also shared a premium family account. I checked his listening history. Mixed in with his usual alternative rock and electronic music were playlists I didn't recognize. I clicked on one. Indie folk music, sad girl singer-songwriter stuff. The exact genre Chloe constantly posted about on her Instagram stories. Songs from artists she'd recommended to me over the past year. Then I found The Smoking Gun. A collaborative playlist titled Road Trip Tunes created 6 weeks earlier. 2 contributors, Marcus and an account under the username Chloe Starlight 22, Chloe's birth date. The playlist had 37 songs, a mix of both their musical preferences. They'd been building it together, adding songs back and forth. The most recent addition was from 3 days ago. I took screenshots of everything. The Netflix history with timestamps. The Spotify playlists. The collaborative playlist with both their names visible. Organized them all in my private cloud folder by date and platform. Then I started looking at other shared services. We had a shared Google Calendar for date nights and important events. I'd noticed that Marcus had started creating private events recently. Ones I couldn't see the details of, just blocked time marked busy. I couldn't access them directly, but I could see when they occurred. I cross-referenced those dates with Chloe's Instagram posts. On a Wednesday evening when Marcus had a busy block from 7 to 10 p.m., Chloe had posted a photo from a restaurant in Boston. A trendy Italian place Marcus had suggested we try for our anniversary next month. Her caption mentioned trying their signature pasta dish with a friend. No photo of the friend. No tag. 2 Sundays ago, Marcus had a busy block all afternoon. Chloe posted an Instagram story from the Boston Public Garden with a cryptic caption about perfect spring days. The location tag was less than a mile from Marcus's apartment. I went back through Chloe's social media for the past 3 months, looking at every post and story through this new lens. The pattern became obvious once I knew to look for it. Vague posts about being in Boston, visiting a friend, with no friend tagged. Photos from restaurants and coffee shops I knew Marcus frequented. Songs he'd recently sent me, posted by her days earlier. Inside jokes in her captions that I'd assumed were about her friends, but now seemed directed at someone else. I checked my bank account next. Marcus and I didn't share finances, but we'd occasionally Venmo each other for shared expenses. I looked at his public Venmo feed. Nothing incriminating there. He was smart enough to keep those transactions private. But I could see who his recent friends were. Chloe's Venmo account was near the top of his friends list. They'd connected sometime in the past few months. By Sunday evening, I had compiled over 50 pieces of circumstantial evidence. Individually, each one could be explained away. Together they were damning. They'd been seeing each other for at least 2 months, probably longer. The affair wasn't opportunistic. It was systematic. They'd created shared playlists, watched shows together, met up regularly when I thought Marcus was working or when Chloe claimed to be hanging out with friends. I spent the next week acting completely normal. I texted Marcus like always, sent him memes, asked about his day. We had dinner Wednesday as planned. I wore the dress he liked. I laughed at his stories. I didn't mention my birthday party or the balcony. He seemed relieved, probably assuming I hadn't seen anything or had convinced myself I'd misinterpreted an innocent moment. Chloe called me that Friday for our weekly check-in. She asked how I was doing, if work was busy, if Marcus and I had fun plans for the weekend. Her voice was light, casual, sisterly. No hint of guilt. I matched her energy perfectly, chatting about a project deadline and my parents' upcoming anniversary. Then I casually mentioned that Dad's 65th birthday was coming up in 7 weeks, mid-June. I asked if she'd help me plan a family dinner to celebrate. She agreed enthusiastically. Started suggesting restaurant ideas, talking about decorations and a cake. I let her plan, let her get excited about it, let her think everything between us was fine. Meanwhile, I continued documenting. Every Netflix show watched when Marcus claimed to be busy. Every Spotify song added to their shared playlist. Every Instagram post from Chloe that aligned with time Marcus had blocked on our shared calendar. 3 weeks after my birthday, I found text message evidence. Not on my phone, on Marcus's. He'd left it on my bathroom counter while taking a shower at my place. I had maybe 4 minutes. I didn't hesitate. I opened his messages and searched for Chloe's name. The thread went back months. I didn't have time to read everything, so I scrolled to recent messages and took rapid screenshots. My hands were shaking, but my finger was steady, capturing image after image. The messages were explicit. Not just about sex, though there was plenty of that, but about their relationship. Inside jokes about me. Complaints about how I was too serious, too focused on work, too predictable. Plans to meet up when I thought Marcus was busy with his supposed work crisis. Chloe venting about living with our parents and Marcus promising her she could crash at his place anytime. One exchange from 2 weeks earlier made my blood run cold. Chloe had written that she felt bad about the birthday party situation, that maybe they should tell me soon. Marcus responded that the timing wasn't right yet, that his lease was up in August and he was thinking about getting a new place anyway, that they should just wait until everything was sorted and then do it cleanly. They had a plan. This wasn't just an affair. It was a transition. Marcus was going to break up with me in a few months once his living situation changed. Presumably so he could move in with Chloe without the complication of an overlapping lease tied to memories of me. They were going to do it cleanly, as if that phrase could somehow make their betrayal acceptable. I finished screenshotting and put his phone back exactly where he'd left it. When he emerged from the shower, I was sitting on my bed scrolling through my own phone, looking completely normal. He kissed my forehead and asked what I wanted to do for dinner. Over the next 4 weeks, I became a forensic investigator of my own life. I went through old credit card statements and found charges from dates when Marcus claimed he was homesick but Chloe had posted from Boston. I checked the metadata on photos Chloe had sent me over the past months, supposedly from her friends' houses, and discovered several were taken in Marcus's neighborhood based on the GPS coordinates embedded in the image files. I created a detailed timeline in a private spreadsheet. Dates, times, evidence type and cross-references. I had 53 documented instances of deception over a 7-week period. 53 times they'd lied to me, individually or together, to facilitate their affair. 53 pieces of evidence that this wasn't a mistake but a deliberate, sustained betrayal. The breaking point came 5 weeks after my birthday. Marcus called me on a Wednesday evening, his voice tight with barely controlled excitement. He told me he'd been offered a promotion at work. More responsibility, more money, and it would require relocating to the company's New York office starting in August. He said it was a huge opportunity, but he wanted to talk about it with me first, figure out what it meant for us. I knew instantly this was the setup for our breakup. This was the clean exit strategy. He'd move to New York, we'd try long distance for a few weeks. It would be too hard, we'd amicably split. Then after a respectful mourning period, he'd just happen to start dating my sister. Maybe they'd claim it developed after we broke up. Maybe they'd say proximity and shared grief brought them together. Whatever story they told, it would make them look less villainous than the truth. I congratulated him calmly. Told him I was so proud. Asked when he needed to decide. He said he had 2 weeks to accept the offer. I suggested we plan something special to celebrate and talk through options. Maybe dinner that Saturday at the Italian place he'd been wanting to try. The same place he'd taken Chloe 6 weeks earlier. He loved that idea. Sounded relieved that I was being supportive rather than worried about the distance. We made plans for Saturday at 7 p.m. After we hung up, I sat on my couch and finally let myself cry. Not because I was losing him. I'd already lost him months ago without realizing it. I cried because my sister had helped him do it. Because she'd listened to me talk about my relationship problems, offered supportive advice, and then used that insider information to position herself as everything I wasn't. But I only let myself cry for 20 minutes. Then I wiped my face, opened my laptop, and began planning. My father's 65th birthday fell on a Saturday in mid-June, 3 weeks away. My mother had already booked a private room at an upscale restaurant in Hartford for the celebration. The guest list included my parents, Chloe and me, my dad's sister and her husband, my dad's college best friend and his wife, and my maternal grandparents. 12 people total, the core of our extended family. The people who mattered most to my father. I called my mom the next day and asked if it would be okay to bring Marcus to the dinner. She was thrilled. She loved Marcus, constantly hinted about future grandchildren, and thought he was the best thing that had happened to me. I mentioned that he might have big career news to share and it would mean a lot to celebrate with the whole family. She insisted he absolutely should come. Then I called Chloe. Asked if she was still planning to attend Dad's party. She confirmed she'd already requested the day off work. I told her I'd invited Marcus and hoped that was okay. She hesitated for just a second, barely noticeable if I hadn't been listening for it, then said of course it would be great to have him there. Her voice was cheerful. Convincing. She'd gotten good at lying to me. I spent the next 3 weeks preparing my case like I was building a legal prosecution. I organized all my evidence into a clear, chronological presentation. Every screenshot, every timeline correlation, every instance of documented deception. I created a digital folder that I could access from my phone, organized by category, shared account activity, social media cross-references, text message screenshots, location data, and financial evidence. I also prepared my emotional state. I went to therapy for the first time in years. Booked 3 emergency sessions with a counselor who specialized in family betrayal. I needed to make sure I could get through what I was planning without breaking down. The therapist helped me process my grief privately so I wouldn't fall apart publicly. She also validated my plan, confirming that what I was experiencing was severe betrayal trauma and that my need for acknowledgement and justice was legitimate. I told my best friend Mara everything 2 weeks before the dinner. She was the only person who knew the full truth. Her first instinct was to want to confront them immediately, to protect me from continuing the charade. But when I explained my plan, she understood. She agreed to be on standby the night of the dinner in case I needed support afterward. I also consulted with a lawyer friend, not for legal action but for advice on how to present evidence effectively. He taught me techniques for keeping calm under pressure, for responding to denial without getting emotional, for maintaining control of the narrative. He reminded me that physical evidence beats emotional reactions every time. The Wednesday before the dinner, Marcus and I had our celebratory date. We went to the Italian restaurant, the one he'd taken Chloe to. I wondered if he'd remember, if he'd feel any guilt ordering from the same menu he'd shared with my sister. He didn't seem to. He was animated about the New York opportunity, talking about neighborhoods he'd looked at, describing the role responsibilities. He asked what I thought about long distance, whether I'd consider moving eventually. I played along beautifully. Said I was excited for him, that we'd figure it out, that our relationship was strong enough to handle some temporary distance. He looked relieved. Reached across the table and took my hand. Told me he loved me. Told me I was incredible for being so understanding. That night, I went home alone and finished my presentation. I decided I wouldn't use slides or a formal display. Too cold, too calculated. Instead, I'd tell the story chronologically, sharing evidence as I went. I'd start with the balcony photo, establish the timeline, then walk through each piece of supporting evidence. I practiced my speech 3 times in my apartment, timing myself, making sure I could get through it without my voice breaking. I also prepared for their potential responses. Marcus would probably deny it initially, claim misunderstanding, try to control the narrative. Chloe would likely cry, play victim, accuse me of ruining Dad's birthday. My parents would be shocked, might try to stop me from continuing. I needed to be ready for all of it. Ready to stay calm, stick to facts, let the evidence speak louder than their denials. The night before the dinner, I barely slept. I kept playing through scenarios, anticipating every possible reaction. But underneath the anxiety was something else, a sense of righteous purpose. For 7 weeks, I'd lived with this knowledge alone. For 7 weeks, they'd continued lying to my face. Tomorrow the lies would end. Tomorrow everyone would know exactly who they were. Saturday arrived bright and warm. I drove to Hartford alone, arriving at the restaurant 15 minutes early. My parents and grandparents were already there, chatting with the hostess. My mom hugged me and complimented my dress. Navy blue, conservative, appropriate. My dad looked happy, relaxed, excited to celebrate with family. Guilt flickered through me for what I was about to do at his party. But he deserved to know the truth more than he deserved a peaceful dinner. Chloe arrived next, wearing a pink sundress and carrying a wrapped present. She hugged me warmly, whispered that I looked beautiful. Her performance was flawless. If I didn't know better, I'd believe she was genuinely happy to see me. Marcus showed up 10 minutes later, apologizing for running late. He greeted my parents enthusiastically, shook hands with my uncles, kissed my cheek. We took our seats. Me between Marcus and my dad, Chloe across the table between my mom and grandmother. The meal began normally. Appetizers ordered, wine poured, conversation flowing about my dad's retirement plans and my grandmother's garden. Marcus charmed everyone with a funny story about a client meeting gone wrong. Chloe showed my mom photos from a friend's recent baby shower. I participated when spoken to but mostly stayed quiet, eating slowly, letting the evening progress naturally. My uncle gave a toast before entrees arrived, thanking my dad for being a wonderful brother, celebrating his health and happiness. Everyone raised their glasses. My dad looked genuinely moved, eyes slightly damp. My mom squeezed his hand. This was supposed to be his perfect evening, surrounded by people who loved him. I was about to destroy that perfection. But better a ruined party than a continued lie. Entrees were served. Conversation continued. My dad opened presents between courses. A golf club from my uncle, a vintage record from his friend, a framed family photo from my grandparents. When it came time for my gift, I handed him a small box containing a nice watch I'd picked out months ago. He loved it, put it on immediately, showed it off to everyone at the table. Then I stood up. The movement was unexpected enough that conversation paused. Everyone looked at me. I took a breath and began speaking. I said I had something important to share with the family. Something difficult that I'd been dealing with privately but felt needed to be addressed openly. My voice was calm, steady, rehearsed. My mom looked curious. My dad looked concerned. Chloe's face went pale. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I pulled out my phone and set it on the table in front of me. Explained that 7 weeks ago at my birthday party, I witnessed something that shattered my trust. I swiped to the first photo, the one of Marcus and Chloe kissing on my balcony. Held my phone up so everyone at the table could see. The reaction was immediate. My grandmother gasped. My uncle's eyes went wide. My mom said something that sounded like a question but didn't form complete words. My dad just stared at the image, processing what he was seeing. Chloe tried to speak, but I held up my hand and kept talking. I said that initial image could have been a one-time mistake, a moment of weakness fueled by alcohol. But what I discovered over the following weeks proved it was much more than that. I began walking through my evidence chronologically. Netflix viewing history showing they watched shows together when Marcus told me he was working late and Chloe said she was home with our parents. I displayed the screenshots with dates and timestamps. Spotify playlists they'd created together, collaborative mixes with both their usernames visible. I showed their shared playlist, pointed out songs added while Marcus and I were supposedly planning our future together. Social media cross-references. Chloe's Instagram posts from Boston locations on days Marcus had mysterious busy blocks on our calendar. I pulled up specific examples, showed the dates, explained the pattern. Text message screenshots where they discussed meeting up, complained about me, planned their future after Marcus's convenient promotion to New York. My voice never wavered. I presented each piece of evidence like I was giving a work presentation, factual and methodical. The table was completely silent except for my voice. No one interrupted. No one tried to defend them. The evidence was too overwhelming. I showed financial correlations, charges on Marcus's credit card from restaurants on dates he claimed to be homesick. Dates that aligned with Chloe posting vague stories about nice dinners with friends. I displayed the collaborative timeline I'd created, showing 53 documented instances of deception over 7 weeks. 53 lies. 53 moments they chose betrayal over honesty. Then I showed the text message that revealed their plan. Marcus's words explaining that his lease was up in August, that they should wait and do it cleanly after he moved. I read it aloud, slowly letting every word sink in. This wasn't just an affair. This was a calculated exit strategy where I'd be discarded once he had his logistics sorted out. When I finished, I put my phone down and looked directly at Chloe, then Marcus. Asked if there was anything I'd gotten wrong, any evidence I'd misinterpreted, any innocent explanation for 53 instances of coordinated deception. My voice was steady but my hands were shaking under the table. Chloe tried first. Her voice was high, panicked, desperate. She said it wasn't like that, they'd never meant to hurt me, things just happened. I asked her to specify which things just happened. The shared Netflix account they'd been using for 2 months? The playlists they'd built together? The text messages planning their future? She couldn't answer. Her face crumpled and she started crying, the same tears she'd used to get out of trouble her whole life. My mother tried to intervene, voice shaky and shocked, asking if we could discuss this privately. I said no. I'd lived with this privately for 7 weeks while they continued lying to me at family dinners, on phone calls and text messages. Everyone at this table deserved to know what kind of people they really were. My dad put his hand on my shoulder, not pulling me back, just steadying me. Marcus attempted damage control next. Said the evidence looked bad, but I was misunderstanding the context. That he and Chloe had become friends, nothing more. That the kiss at my party was a one-time mistake they both immediately regretted. I held up my phone again, scrolled to the text messages discussing their physical relationship in graphic detail. Read 3 specific messages aloud, including one from 4 days ago where Chloe told him she couldn't wait to not have to hide anymore. His face went red. He opened his mouth then closed it. There was no explanation that could reconcile his claim of friendship with the evidence of an extended physical and emotional affair. He looked at my dad, perhaps hoping for male solidarity or understanding. My dad looked back at him with an expression I'd never seen before. Cold, disgusted, disappointed. Chloe tried begging next. Reached across the table toward me, tears streaming, voice breaking. Said she was sorry, she didn't know how it happened, she never wanted this. I asked her how many times she'd lied to my face over 7 weeks. How many phone calls where I'd shared relationship concerns and she'd given supportive advice while sleeping with my boyfriend. How many family dinners where she'd sat across from me playing the loving sister. She couldn't answer. She just kept crying and saying she was sorry. My grandmother stood up and left the table. She couldn't watch anymore. My uncle followed her out, presumably to make sure she was okay. My mom was crying now too, quietly, her hand over her mouth. My dad sat completely still, staring at Marcus with barely controlled rage. I picked up my purse and told everyone I was leaving. My dad asked if I was okay to drive. I said yes, I'd prepared for this moment. I'd grieved privately so I wouldn't fall apart publicly. This dinner wasn't about forgiveness or reconciliation. It was about truth. Now everyone knew the truth. I looked at Marcus and told him we were done, effective immediately. That I'd leave anything of his that was at my apartment with my building manager and he could pick it up without contacting me. That if he tried to reach out, I'd get a restraining order. He started to protest, to say we should talk when everyone was calmer. I cut him off. There was nothing to discuss. He'd made his choice 2 months ago when he started sleeping with my sister. Then I looked at Chloe. Told her I hoped Marcus was worth destroying our relationship over because we were done too. I wouldn't be coming to family dinners if she was there. I wouldn't be doing phone calls or texts or pretending we were still sisters. She could have Marcus, she could have the fantasy life they'd planned together, but she'd lost me permanently. The betrayal wasn't just the affair. It was every lie she'd told after, every moment she'd let me trust her while knowing she was deceiving me. My dad stood up, put his arm around my shoulders, told me he loved me and he was proud of me. That took me by surprise. I'd expected anger at ruining his birthday, or disappointment in my timing. But he said he'd rather know the truth than live in ignorance, even if the truth was painful. He asked if I needed someone to drive me home. I said no, but thank you. I walked out of the restaurant into the warm June evening. Got in my car. Drove 15 minutes to a grocery store parking lot. Then I finally let myself break down. Mara was on the phone with me within 2 minutes, talking me through the panic attack, reminding me to breathe, telling me I'd done the right thing. I sat in that parking lot for 45 minutes, crying harder than I'd ever cried in my life. Not just for Marcus but for Chloe. For the sister I thought I had. For the family dynamic that would never be the same. The aftermath was complicated and messy in ways I'd anticipated and ways I hadn't. My dad finished his birthday dinner with the remaining family members, then apparently turned to Marcus and told him to leave. Just pointed to the door and said he never wanted to see him again. Marcus left without argument. My dad drove Chloe home in silence. My mom tried to talk to her in the car but Chloe refused to respond. When they got home, my parents told Chloe she had 1 month to find her own place. After everything I'd sacrificed to maintain stability in our family, after all the times I'd been perfect so she could be forgiven, they were drawing a line. My mom called me the next day to apologize, crying, saying she couldn't believe Chloe had done this. That she'd raised her better than that. I told her it wasn't her fault. Some people make choices that have nothing to do with how they were raised. Marcus tried texting me for 2 weeks. I blocked him after the first day. He tried calling from different numbers. I blocked those too. Eventually he stopped. I heard through mutual friends that he turned down the New York promotion, maybe because his big plan had fallen apart and he didn't want to relocate alone. He stayed in Boston, but we moved in completely different circles. I never saw him again after that restaurant. Chloe tried reaching out too. Long text messages explaining her side, saying she knew what she'd done was wrong but she'd fallen in love with him and didn't know how to stop. Claiming she'd tried to break it off multiple times but kept going back. I didn't respond to any of it. What explanation could possibly make me forgive the systematic deception? The birthday party kiss? The months of lying? The plan to wait until his lease was up so they could transition cleanly from my relationship to theirs? She moved out of my parents' house 3 weeks later into an apartment with 2 roommates. He texted me the address in case I ever wanted to visit. I deleted the message without reading past the first line. My dad updated me on her situation occasionally. She was working full-time at a new receptionist job, seemed to be figuring things out. I didn't ask for details and he didn't offer them. Marcus and Chloe stayed together for 3 months after the dinner. I know this because my mom mentioned it in passing during one of our weekly calls. She was worried about Chloe, who'd apparently developed severe anxiety and stopped eating regularly. I felt a flash of satisfaction hearing that, followed immediately by guilt for taking pleasure in her suffering. The therapist told me both reactions were normal. Then in September my mom called to tell me they'd broken up. Marcus had apparently ended things, said the relationship had too much negativity around it, that he couldn't handle the guilt. Chloe was devastated, according to my mom. Crying constantly, not leaving her apartment. My mom asked if I'd consider calling her. I said no. The consequences of betrayal don't end just because the affair ended. Natural outcomes aren't my responsibility to fix. My relationship with my parents survived but changed. They were supportive of my decision to cut contact with Chloe, never pressured me to forgive her or include her in family events. But I could see the pain it caused them. Having 2 daughters who couldn't be in the same room, having to choose between us for holidays and celebrations. I never wanted to put them in that position. But I also couldn't pretend the betrayal hadn't happened just to make family gatherings comfortable. I spent 6 months in intensive therapy processing the trauma. Learned about betrayal trauma bonding, about how affairs that involve family members create compounded psychological damage. Worked through my people-pleasing tendencies, my pattern of prioritizing others' comfort over my own needs. Recognized how my role as the perfect daughter had made me vulnerable to people who'd exploit that stability. I started dating again the following spring. Slowly, carefully, with clearly communicated boundaries. I told new partners about what happened with Marcus early on, not for sympathy but as a disclosure of my triggers and needs around honesty. Some men were intimidated by the story. Some were compassionate. I learned to distinguish between the two quickly. Looking back 2 years later, I don't regret how I handled it. Could I have confronted them privately? Sure. Could I have avoided ruining my dad's birthday? Maybe. But private confrontations allow for private lies. Public evidence creates public accountability. And my family deserved to know what kind of betrayal had been happening under their roof, at their dinners, during their celebrations. The biggest lesson I learned is that not everyone deserves your forgiveness. We're conditioned, especially women, to be understanding and forgiving and emotionally generous. To prioritize family bonds over personal hurt. To believe that forgiveness is always the healthier choice. But forgiveness without accountability is just enabling. And some betrayals are so fundamental that cutting contact is the only healthy response. I also learned the power of documentation over emotion. If I'd confronted them on the balcony that night at my birthday, it would have dissolved into he said she said accusations. I'd have been the jealous girlfriend overreacting to an innocent moment. But evidence doesn't lie. Timestamps don't lie. Collaborative playlists and shared Netflix accounts and text message threads don't lie. I gave them no room to manipulate the narrative because the facts spoke louder than their denials. The hardest lesson was accepting that I'll never understand why. Why Chloe chose my boyfriend specifically. Why Marcus pursued my sister instead of just ending our relationship honestly. Why both of them thought months of deception were better than one difficult conversation. I used to obsess over those questions, replaying interactions trying to identify what I'd missed. But eventually I realized the why doesn't matter. Their choices say more about their character than anything I did or didn't do. I'm okay now. Better than okay actually. I have a new relationship with someone who values honesty and treats betrayal as the deal breaker it should be. Have a career I love. I have family relationships that survived because I prioritized truth over comfort. And I have self-respect I didn't have before. The knowledge that I'm capable of handling devastating pain with dignity and strategic thinking. Do I still miss my sister sometimes? Yes. The sister I thought I had. The relationship I thought we'd build as adults. But that person never really existed. She was a performance. A role Chloe played until something she wanted more came along. And you can't miss something that was never real. If you found this story valuable, subscribe for more strategic revenge stories where evidence beats emotion and accountability matters more than forgiveness. Leave a comment about your own experience with family betrayal. Reading them reminds me I'm not alone in this. And remember, when someone shows you who they really are through their actions, believe them. The first time. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts.